Hunter Biden's business partner may have helped set up meetings between White House officials and Chinese tycoons. That's according to more leaked emails from the former vice president's son. China's GDP numbers are out, but are they telling the truth? Hanging the national flags of the US, UK, and Australia from an apartment's windows attracts the attention of police in China, but someone is still doing just that. Students in mainland China seem to be taking inspiration from Hong Kong protesters' slogans. Hong Kongers' tactics also resonate with Thailand and Korea. And the US, Japan, India, and Australia will hold a naval exercise. Japan will export weapons to Vietnam, and this amidst Chinese military aggression in the South China Sea. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. More emails regarding Hunter Biden's relations with China are being revealed. A report claims that Hunter's business partner may have helped secure meetings between senior White House officials and Chinese investors, who were also Chinese regime officials.
Hunter's business associates may have helped arrange meetings between Chinese tycoons and high-level White House officials in the Obama administration. That's according to emails obtained by author Peter Schweitzer and seen by NTD's sister media, The Epoch Times. The delegation, called the China Entrepreneur Club, visited the U.S. back in November 2011. The group is composed of numerous billionaires who are also senior Communist Party officials. In an email from October 2011, an intermediary for the delegation made a request to Hunter's business partner, writing, "A tour of the White House and a meeting with a member of the Chief of Staff's office and John Kerry would be great." "This is China Inc.," he wrote of the club, explaining that the total income of the group's 44 members accounted for roughly 4% of China's gross domestic product. He called it a soft diplomacy play that could be very effective, adding that it would give Hunter's business partners good access to the Chinese delegation for any deal in the future. In a later email on November 11th, Hunter's business partner wrote, "Couldn't confirm this with Hunter on the line, but we got him his meeting at the White House Monday for the Chinese folks." And on November 14th, the day of the Chinese delegation meeting at the White House, another of Hunter's business partners wrote, "Archer got the Chinese guys all taken care of in D.C." The Chinese tycoons met with multiple senior officials during the meeting, including then Commerce Secretary John Bryson and then Undersecretary of State Robert Hormats. According to a document introducing members of the Chinese delegation, the group also met with then Vice President Joe Biden. The document was posted on the website of the Italian National Chamber of Commerce, but the alleged meeting was not recorded on the White House record. 2 years later, in 2013, Hunter's investment firm co-founded a private equity called BHR. It later became an early investor and stock owner in one of China's fastest-growing startups, DiDi Chuxing, the Chinese version of Uber. The leader of the delegation, Liu Chuanzhi, is also the father of the president of DiDi Chuxing. Liu served multiple terms as a representative of the Chinese Communist Party's National People's Congress. Hunter served as a director of BHR until last October. His lawyer said he didn't receive compensation for the position. Reporting by Penny Zhou, NTD News.
China's economic numbers are out today. It posted its third quarter growth, but the number fell below expectations. NTD's Paul Graney spoke to a Chinese economics expert to get his take.
China says its third quarter GDP grew 4.9% compared to a year ago. That's lower than the more than 5% analysts predicted, but better than the second quarter's growth. We talked to Shehzad Kazi at China Beige Book. It's an independent research organization that focuses on Chinese economic data. He says a closer look at the data shows the recovery is largely driven by industrial sectors and state investment, not household spending.
And so the takeaway remains that this is not a recovery that is being driven by Chinese consumption. This is very much a recovery that is being driven by foreign demand for Chinese products and the Chinese manufacturing sector.
Overall, the first 3 quarters saw a 0.7% GDP growth, but retail sales are still 7.2% down compared to last year. Contrary to what many analysts believe, that China will be the only economy in the world to post year-over-year growth in 2020, Kazi says China Beige Book's data shows that's doubtful.
But if you look at year-ago levels, the economy remains most certainly in a contraction. And so China has not yet, despite what some of the headlines may suggest, China has not yet fully recovered or rebounded back to pre-pandemic levels of growth.
Kazi adds that there is also the continuing problem with data revision and reliability of Chinese data. For example, China revised down its fixed asset investment number last year to make this year's number look better.
What we're seeing is discrepancy not so much in this particular data, but the basis on which we're calculating change. So a lot of the fixed asset investment data, for example, has been revised and brought down for last year. So on that basis, this year's fixed asset investment data is now going to look better. I think one of the things we need to really contend with is that Chinese GDP is a political figure. The Chinese GDP is a target that is set and must be hit.
For example, retail sales dropped 7 months out of the 9 months, but the official narrative is that Chinese consumers are powering this recovery, so the Chinese officials' number will have to reflect that sentiment.
Now we look to China's eastern Shandong province. That's where one human rights activist hung the national flags of the United States, Britain, and Australia from the windows of his apartment on Monday. The activist, named Sui Shuangshen, said his unusual display was an effort to condemn the Chinese Communist Party, or CCP's, tyranny. In a video posted online, he shouted, "Long live democracy! Dictatorship must die." He also encouraged viewers not to be afraid and to spread the video around the world. Later, a crowd of police officers and Chinese officials gathered downstairs below his apartment. Sui also told us that he keeps the national flags of 8 or 9 democratic countries in his home. That's because of his respect and yearning for democracy and the rule of law. Sui explained that Chinese people living in the U.S. have the freedom to sing the regime's national anthem, fly the CCP's flag, and even wave it during parades if they choose. But he questioned why those inside China are blocked from displaying the national flags of democratic countries inside their homes. Sui used to own one apartment in Qingdao City inside Shandong. He was arrested and jailed from 2016 to 2018. That's after he reported a local real estate company for corruption, like bribing local authorities and illegally occupying state-owned land. Now we turn to another Chinese citizen who voiced a rare public protest against the Chinese regime. In Xiamen City along China's southern coast, activist Xiao Chun raised a banner at the gate of Xiamen University on Sunday. The banner proclaimed that the CCP must step down and be held accountable for persecuting Chinese people. Xiao also posted 2 more demands online: that all political prisoners be released and that China implement political reforms like adopting a democratic constitutional government. Chinese netizens expressed appreciation for his bravery online, but many also expressed concern for his personal safety. Now we turn to a professor in China who's facing a life-threatening dilemma. He's been diagnosed with cancer and cannot afford his treatment. In an effort to raise money, he set up a crowdfunding campaign. But even though he dedicated his entire career to preaching about the superiority of communism, Chinese authorities shut down his campaign, fearing it would reflect badly on the communist system.
Wuhan University professor Tao Yaxiong broadcasts his plea for help online. Tao is a dedicated professor of Marxism. He teaches students about the superiority of communism in his daily lectures. He's taught in Confucius Institutes, which are partnerships between universities and schools in China and abroad, often known to promote communist principles and ideology. And he is a strong supporter of China's Belt and Road Initiative, an infrastructure program that sends funding to poorer countries while also expanding China's influence and control overseas. According to his crowdfunding campaign, Tao claimed to have already spent over $60,000 for his cancer treatment, his life savings, but now the cancer has spread to his brain, and a huge sum of money is needed for further treatment. His plight sparked a strong response after it began circulating online and in the media. One netizen commented online, writing, "If a university professor cannot even afford treatment when he's seriously ill, think about what it's like for lower-class people. That's horrible." That's as a Twitter user asserted that Tao was falling into the grave he dug for others. He called Tao a liar for lecturing about the superiority of communism. Tao has since been silenced by authorities. According to Radio Free Asia, local officials are suspected of pressuring Tao and his family through his job at Wuhan University. Even Tao's co-workers reportedly keep their distance from him now. The report says Chinese authorities fear people will question the so-called superiority of the communist system if they hear about Tao's situation. In a twist, another university professor named Mr. Zhou says Tao doesn't even believe in the Marxist theory he teaches. Zhou explains Tao is made to live in the institutional environment and so is forced to defend it, but only does so to make a living. Zhou called Tao's situation tragic. He said in the communist system, the more aware a person is, the more painful the situation is to endure. NTD News.
China is on its way to becoming the world's first cashless society, and its digital currency and electronic payment system could be the first global digital currency. The Chinese Communist Party already controls every aspect of the country's financial system. So how could a digital currency give it any more control? Our business reporter Paul Graney asked Daniel Wagner that question. He's the CEO of Country Risk Solutions.
And of course, in your new book, The Chinese Vortex, you've spoken a lot about the Belt and Road Initiative. Will there be some overlap here?
Yes, indeed. So part of the reason this is being created is, in fact, to target BRI Belt and Road Initiative countries for use with the DCEP. This is, if you will, another way of enhancing Chinese soft power. And they're not being shy about saying that the BRI countries are the first target, if you will, for the use of this currency internationally.
Have we seen anybody sign on yet?
There's been expressions of interest, and I don't think it's going to be too long before we see governments in great numbers sign on. I think it needs to be launched first before they're likely to get on the gravy train in a significant way.
Incredible. Daniel, appreciate your updates. We'll keep an eye on it. We'll have you back again. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
According to the predominant state media, China Media, the U.S. Educational Testing Service last week released the available seats for taking the TOEFL test for Beijing and Shanghai. TOEFL, or Test of English as a Foreign Language, is a test for non-native English speakers who wish to enroll in U.S. universities. The testing period related to January to August next year. All the available seats were taken within 5 minutes of being released. Students from China have to pass the test to be accepted by any U.S. university. A Chinese netizen commented on the rapid speed in which the seats were taken. They said despite the poor reputation given to the U.S. by Chinese media, the TOEFL test seats have gone within 5 minutes. Among the Chinese students studying in the U.S., there are young people who earned the opportunity to go there. There are also children and grandchildren of Chinese Communist Party officials who gain access to the world outside of China. Some of them even obtain green cards or citizenship. According to Hong Kong's The Trend magazine, earlier quoted statistics from the CCP's internal figures suggest that as of 2012, almost 190 out of the just over 200 members of the 17th CCP's Central Committee have family members living or naturalized in Western countries, such as the US and Europe, which is over 90%. Citizens from across Asia seem to be taking inspiration from Hong Kong's pro-democracy protesters. The city's tactics and slogans even appear to resonate with some students in mainland China.
The streets of Thailand are starting to resemble those in Hong Kong as young Thai protesters echo tactics used by their counterparts there. Amid chants of "keep fighting," protesters are calling for a rewrite of the country's military-drafted constitution. They're criticizing the monarchy and demanding reform of the ruling establishment. Learning from Hong Kong, Thailand's protesters didn't disclose the size of the rallies until the last minute. They also used social media and messaging apps to coordinate the largely leaderless protests. Their efforts closely mirror Hong Kong's so-called "be like water" protest strategy. But the motto has also taken root elsewhere. In South Korea, a widely popular band called BTS is facing backlash from China. That's after it used the slogan "Be Water" to promote its branded bottled water. It's unclear whether the band intended to draw the reference to Hong Kong's pro-democracy movement. The Chinese regime's internet-savvy supporters, dubbed the Little Pinks, are expressing their outrage toward the band online. The conflict closely follows another instance of BTS criticism from China, which condemned the band just last week for making comments about the Korea War and expressing solidarity with the U.S. Some Chinese netizens were angered because the band did not recognize Chinese soldiers who fought alongside North Korea.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says the United States and Brazil must reduce their dependence on Chinese imports. He said China's participation in their economies poses an enormous risk. Pompeo said their nations will be more prosperous and citizens will be more secure if they don't depend on China for critical supplies. He made the remarks at a virtual summit on increased U.S.-Brazil cooperation aimed at post-pandemic recovery. China is Brazil's largest trading partner. The Trump administration wants to strengthen ties with Brazil and provide a counterweight to China. At the summit, Brazil's president announced 3 agreements with the United States. They aim to ensure good business practices and stop corruption. Japan and Vietnam agreed on Monday to strengthen security and economic cooperation. This is in face of concern over China's aggression in the South China Sea. In the past few months, China has been conducting military exercises in the area.
Without naming China directly, Japanese Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga said in a speech that Japan opposes aggression in the South China Sea.
It is important that all countries concerned do not rely on force or threats, but work toward peaceful resolution of disputes based on international law.
In recent months, China has increased its military presence and aggressive behavior in the South China Sea. It claims sovereignty over 90% of the South China Sea and is asserting its claims by building military outposts and deploying Coast Guard ships to intimidate foreign vessels. Beijing's claims in the region have been formally rejected by the U.S. In his speech, Suga hinted that China's actions breach the Association of Southeast Asian Nations' outlook on the Indo-Pacific.
Unfortunately, there are some actions seen in the South China Sea which go against the ideas mentioned in ASEAN outlook on the Indo-Pacific, such as the rule of law and openness. Japan strongly opposes any steps that heighten tension in the South China Sea.
In the face of China's aggressive behavior, Japan and Vietnam came to an agreement. Japan will export defense equipment and technology to Vietnam. Suga described the move as a big step in the field of security for both countries. Japan is also currently negotiating equipment transfer deals with Indonesia and Thailand.
Now we take a look at the Quad, a group of 4 nations working to safeguard the Indo-Pacific region. The U.S., Japan, India, and Australia are set to hold a naval exercise next month. It marks the first military-level cooperation between the 4 key partners. It follows a meeting between the Quad nations' foreign ministers held weeks ago in Japan. The talks focused on their cooperation amidst Chinese military aggression in the region. And that's all for today's China in Focus. Thanks for watching and see you tomorrow.